This is Nathan. I think I'm finally in.
Okay. Patty, have you heard anything from Rusty?
No.
Okay, we'll get started. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Patty, I'll turn it over.
Megan, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Richard Beltz, Rita Spinelli,
Here.
Nathan Foeller,
Here.
Patricia Denicola,
Here.
Tina Champ,
Here.
Jonathan Cleaver.
Here.
The first item on tonight's agenda is a proposal from Georgia's Transportation. Just as a little bit of a background, Act 13 of 2020 provided for school districts to continue to pay school bus contractors to maintain their complement of employees and buses due to the pandemic. Georgia's Transportation has presented a proposal with an amount that would allow him to maintain his complement of vehicles, complement of drivers throughout the pandemic, throughout the quarantine. I will let you know that throughout the school district community, a lot of school districts have negotiated with their transportation contractors to supply a payment to them so that they could continue operations. Georgia's proposal was for the district to pay a lump sum of $137,614.90 to close out the 1920 school year. And so we're bringing that proposal to the Finance Committee to see their thoughts. We had, talked to Georgia's Transportation about this proposal and kind of asked, kind of an idea of where they thought, their final number was. While their $137,614.90 would not cover their complete costs that is going to be necessary to continue their operations and to stay in business. That was their, was their want, but obviously they would consider any lesser amount that the school board might entertain. Does the committee have any thoughts on whether or not they feel the school district should make a payment to Georgia's Transportation in regards to being shut down due to the pandemic, or at what level?
Yeah.
This is Rita. I feel we should definitely consider something. I mean, he was nice enough to drive our meals around, and he has been more than cooperative with us in the past. So I definitely feel we need to consider some sort of payment.
And I will say that Georgia's Transportation did not charge us anything for delivering meals to all of the satellite sites so that we delivered student meals to.
And again, you said that the, am I muted or not muted now?
I can hear you, Rita.
Okay.
I can hear
You said that the total he's looking for is 137.
Yeah, $137,614.90.
Okay. Do you think we can perhaps offer 125?
I think we could perhaps offer 100, 110, possibly.
Okay. Well, whatever you think we can start a bid with, I'm fine with that.
And you feel that's something we're able to pay, Patty?
You know, we had an amount budgeted for in transportation for costs for 1920. So there is, you know, an amount that was budgeted for transportation that hasn't been expended. Obviously, we
Okay.
were operating at a deficit. You know, we were expected to operate at a deficit for 1920. So that's also something, you know, the board may want to consider. You know, if we're operating at a deficit, do we pay for, you know, something that we didn't receive any direct service? However, we're maintaining that we will still have a transportation, you know, company in play for the next school year, provided, you know, we don't know what next school year yet will exactly look like, as PDE is, you know, not given,
Right.
you know, complete details of how we'll actually operate for 2020-21.
Right. Okay. I also don't have a problem with it. I feel it's in our best interest to make sure that he's there and able to serve us in the future. And then obviously that has to be balanced with our other, you know, financial situation and ability to pay.
Okay, well, we will take this information back to Georgia's Transportation, and then we will, you know, present the board with whatever, you know, their response is.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We won't place anything on a board agenda for vote until, you know, we bring back whatever the result is, you know, from taking this information back to Georgia's. Give the committee and the boards, you know, an opportunity to review it before we replace anything on the board agenda.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the 2020-21 budget. We did pass that proposed budget back at the end of May. There has been some updates since then. JJ, if you could share that PDF document, the first page.
Yep, I will switch. I'll switch
Okay.
screen share. Are you able to see
Yes,
that?
I can see it. So since the end of May, there's been a lot of activity in Harrisburg. Late last week, the governor signed the House bill that provided for funding of K through 12 education. Within that, there were a number of changes for the district, for districts across the state. So what I've put forth is the changes that happened from a revenue standpoint since the end of May, and changes that have happened from an expense standpoint since the end of May, with an update on where our budget deficit sits as of June 8th. The basic education subsidy went from $8,986,187 to $9,282,109, an increase of $295,922. Special education subsidy went from $1,694,119 down to $1,648,929, a decrease of $45,190. Our Social Security and PSER subsidies also decreased. They decreased not from a different level of funding, but from a decrease in the costs associated with those reimbursements. The decrease comes from the fact that we had retirements that we've determined we don't need to fill those positions, so we will have savings when we don't incur the FICA, the Social Security, and the PSERS costs. Therefore, then we don't get that reimbursement on those costs from the state. So you'll see a $30,000 drop in our Social Security subsidy and $137,000 drop in our PSERS subsidy. There is new funds within what the governor signed. It's called the COVID-19 Disaster Health and Safety Grant. That's a total of $283,802 that is estimated to be awarded to the district. Those will be one-time funds received as it relates to the pandemic. Additionally, those monies are spearheaded to provide for PPE and cleaning and pandemic-related expenditures. So we will have expenditures related to that grant, related to COVID-19 disaster health and safety, that we would need, those expenditures will need to fit within those grant guidelines. So you will see down below that we also added expenditures related to that grant, matching the $283,802. Also added to the revenue was a dyslexia expansion grant. That's a grant of $15,000 that's operated through an IU. Again, that grant is a cost reimbursable. So as we incur the costs for those grant related activities, we'll be reimbursed up to $15,000. So you'll see an increase in those expenses as well for $15,000 for that grant. There were also some changes in what our allocations were for federal dollars through Title I, Title II, Title IV. We had estimated funding at the same level as 1920, but we actually got some increases there. So that increase is $94,407. So total revenue increases since May 27th, $476,427. And down below, you can see that takes our revenue estimates from $40,090,465 to $40,566,892. From an expenditure standpoint, we had a number of retirements between professional and support staff. We've determined that we can operate by not filling those positions. Our 100 object code for salaries, we would have savings of $799,163, dropping from $15,835,818 down to $15,036,655. From a 200 object code, that's going to be all the benefits related to personnel, the PSERS costs, the Social Security and Medicare cost, all those employer related charges, medical benefits, all of the benefits related to carrying an employee. Those costs will drop from $13,540,335 to $13,460,598, a decrease of $79,737. There are a number of benefits within the collective bargaining agreements that provide for payouts of unused sick days upon retirement. So while the benefit cost related to these employees was more than $79,000, some of that savings is offset by what we need to pay out in unused sick days. We have the COVID-19 disaster health and safety expenses. That $283,802 in expenses ties directly to that, the new money, the new grant dollars that were approved by the governor of $283,802. And again, that is for specific requirements as part of the grant, mainly related to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. We had to increase some of our federal title expenditures. That relates to required allocations for family engagement, non-public services, other items as part of the grants. When our allocation went up, we had to reevaluate how much what percentages we were applying to those items as part of the required federal programs. So you'll see those went up by $50,217. And then we added in the dyslexia expansion grant expenses of $15,000. So that will match the dyslexia grant of $15,000. As we spend the funds, we will get reimbursed for them. So we had a total expense decrease from 527 of $529,881. That takes our expenses from $43,043,444 to $42,513,563. That drops our deficit to $1,946,671. JJ, can you go? These pages will also be uploaded onto the website tomorrow morning. JJ, can you go to the second page? As we move through this budget cycle, we're constantly updating as new information comes from Harrisburg, and we're constantly looking at ideas of how do we solve this budget deficit. There are some potential options for solving the budget deficit. I don't like presenting them because they are very unpopular, and I don't think anybody within the district or the community wants to see things like this happen. But unfortunately, with the lack of proper state funding to cover our mandated and other costs, districts, especially after this pandemic, are left with some very difficult decisions ahead of them. So with our adjusted deficit as of today, June 8th of $1,946,671, potential options to solve this budget deficit may be some form of tax increase. A 1 mil tax increase would bring about $305,000 to the school district, dropping the budget deficit to just over 1.6 million. There are a number of expenditures that districts are accustomed to incurring these expenditures, but they're not necessarily mandated to incur those costs. One item is non-instructional services. That would be co-curricular, sports, things like that. Those items are not mandated to be provided. However, there are items that are in fact provided by almost every school district. It would be a difficult decision to eliminate those, but this is an option that would eliminate the budget deficit. That would save $760,608. The other item would be non-mandated transportation. There are certain components of transportation that are mandated by school code. However, regular general transportation is not something that is actually mandated. That could be roughly $1 million savings, which would take us to a small budget surplus. I know this is a lot of information to digest. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made before we pass this final budget. In light of that, we will be evaluating additional options, and we will be holding, as we indicated before, weekly finance committee meetings. We will be advertising another meeting for next Monday, June 15th at 6 p.m., where we will bring forth any additional options we can find. Now that the state budget has been signed by the governor, our state numbers, our federal numbers, I don't anticipate any changes in those numbers. So our revenue numbers are pretty much from a state and federal level. What we see today is what we will continue to see, but we may find additional, expenditure savings. We're going to be looking every day at additional items to find ways to curtail costs, cut costs to get us to that balanced budget that we need.
All good information, Patty, and thank you for all your hard work on this.
Yes, I agree, Patty. Go ahead, Nathan.
Like I said, just one question I had, the non-instructional services, that 760, is that the total that we're spending right now on all non-instructional services? Or is that what you think?
That would be the total that is currently budgeted for 2020-21.
Okay.
So that would include salary, benefits, supplies, all of that.
Okay. And then I'm assuming non-mandated transportation is a much more vague number at this point.
That's based upon, our average costs for regular transportation in years past.
Okay.
But it would be somewhere around that number.
Okay. I don't think I have any further questions at this point. Obviously, glad to see clarity on more of the numbers. That's helping move in the right direction, and hard decisions to make from here. We'll get through this.
And again, we will have weekly finance committee meetings to continue to update, to continue to provide information. All the information kind of came to fruition late Friday as far as state funding numbers, so that helped get to this point today to at least to be able to present some additional revenue that the district so badly needs. So that was helpful, but again, we're going to have continued meetings to ensure that everybody is in the loop as to where we see expenditures going, where we see all these revenue numbers tracking.
Okay.
Patty, this is Rita, and my question, I guess it's a question, was going to be, other school districts obviously have some of the same issues we have, but my guess is that they have a fund balance to draw from to deal with some of these negative amounts, which we no longer have, correct?
That is correct. Many districts are, struggling due to the effects of the pandemic, and not only the effects of the pandemic, but the effects of rising mandated costs with little support from the state to support those costs. So we are not the only district that is, struggling in this situation. However, some districts do have a fund balance that they're relying upon to get through this year. And, looking forward, they are, informing their boards of how quickly that fund balance can decrease to the point that, it decreased for Lehighton.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the panelists before I go to the?
No other questions from me.
Not for me at this point either.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Bradley? Is Mr. Bradley?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I sent a spreadsheet into the committee. Can you pull that up by any chance?
I do. The only thing I have pulled up is what was on the agenda and the stuff from Patty, because it puts it into a PDF.
I understand. I sent a spreadsheet to this committee so that we could have a discussion openly as if we were in an open meeting. And I sent that information to the members of the committee, including Patty and yourself. And I have read receipts saying that at least she read it or she saw it. Did anybody take any of that information and bring it to this meeting or give it to the host so that we could have a educated conversation by looking at these pictures?
When did you send that, Mr. Bradley?
This afternoon.
Do you know approximately what time?
5 o'clock. Little after 5, little before 5. They read it. It's just a spreadsheet, sir.
Mr. Bradley, this is Nathan. I received your email. I see here at 5:02. I was actually driving home at that time. I literally walked in the door and sat directly down for this meeting. So I didn't see it until you just mentioned it. I went and looked for it. I certainly haven't had time to look at it and evaluate. Apologize.
No problem. But we're going to have apparently another finance committee meeting next week. What I'm looking at from what you're being given by our administration is trivial information at best. I think that the lack of information makes it very difficult for the district to make decisions, right? It's great that you're re-pulling up this document that you put together. However, you're 2 million, you're 5% off. In my spreadsheet, I show massive amounts of area where growth was unretarded by our board in the past decade. You have proposed tax increases, and it looks like this finance committee is allowing the administration to create their own budget for themselves, which makes no sense at all. It's our responsibility, Nathan. So what work did you or Rita do towards this financial deficit that we have in reviewing the information that we sought in the academic committee? I'll just name the 3 real quick. A list of all mandated and unmandated educational benefits provided by the agency. Now, on your little document that you created here, you showed that there was some unmandated, 700,000. We need a list of actually what those services are so that you can make an educated decision. Next was a total number of students in the district from 2010 to 2020. Because we want to look at the population of students that require these benefits and the amount of services that we provide to them in relationship to the budgets that we created over the last 10 years. And then the last thing, which is your largest funded amount, is the contracts we have with our employees. So the district staff members should be listed by their title and the educational responsibilities that they provide. This list should identify if the employee is a full-time or part-time employee of the agency. The list should be for 2 fixed periods because employees tend to fluctuate. And if you treat it like a balance sheet, that it's a snapshot in time, I picked the 2 dates, right? Fiscal year ending 2018 and fiscal year ending 2019, right? Which, since you can't do this fiscal year because it's June 30th, let's just use May 31st or the end of May as that date, at which point you'd be able to look at some information. So Nathan, did you request any of this information from your subordinate administration yet? Because
Mr. Bradley, on the things you're discussing, Mr. Bradley, they have been presented to you. Actually, the student count has been presented. The amount of full and part-time people have been given to you. So you have all that information that you're saying you do not have.
But the public does not. So I think that the important thing that we have to realize, Mr. Cleaver, and I was talking to the board member, so I'll address my information to Mr. Nathan Foeller. Nathan, our school policy, and Rita, who's been a member of this board for a much longer time than Nathan, so actually I'll talk to Rita. Rita, our school policy mandates that information pertinent to the subject matter be provided to the press and public at the meeting. Here we're seeing that our subordinate administration's presenting information to the meeting, and then she's going to put it on the website later. It's going to be very difficult for public to participate when they don't have the information, much like Nathan felt bad that he only had an hour when I sent me my spreadsheet. The goal was to put the spreadsheet up so I could discuss it with you, Nathan, and show it to you during this meeting. I'm a stakeholder. Rita, do you follow Pennsylvania school code and our LASD policy that all these pertinent documents need to be provided to the press and public at the meeting?
I believe they are. They're up in front of the screen. This is an ongoing process. As things happen, it becomes available. That's why we're having these weekly meetings to show what changed since the last time. That information is up on my screen. It's up for everyone who's attending this meeting to see. I believe the press is involved. That is going to change. Obviously, it's going to change. They will see, the public will see it tomorrow morning and they can give their input. I really don't understand why you continue to tell us that we're not doing things when right there in front of me, I see it on the screen.
Yet the information needs to be provided, Rita, not as it comes out in the middle of the meeting, at the beginning, so they can make public comment in a Sunshine Act meeting, like you're in right now. Okay? And the information that I requested, like how many students, which we should have, and I asked for it in advance. Actually, the email was on June 2nd. We're talking June 8th now. This information should have been provided to this board. And the fact that we as a board are not holding our subordinate administration accountable is a problem. It's a very simple process. It's a very simple process.
Other individuals requesting.
I know, but I'm asking Rita why this information was not provided to her as a finance committee member so that she could have this discussion.
Mr. Bradley, as I said before, the information was sent to all the board members, Mr. Bradley.
I am talking to Rita.
I understand that, but again, you're saying they haven't received it. All the board members have received the information. Full-time, part-time employees, they've received it on student counts as well.
And also their educational responsibilities that they provide?
We have other individuals who are requesting to talk.
I know, but do you have that information, sir? Did you present that to your board? And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Rita. She's the chairperson of this meeting, or Nathan.
Actually, Mr. Fuller.
Mr. Fuller. I'm sorry. Mr. Fuller, did you ask for this information and was it provided to you as the chairperson?
He doesn't have to ask for it, Mr. Bradley. They have it.
One more time. I asked for
information.
I have
misposed, again, to be fair with other people. I have misposed waiting.
Hold on. Did you ask Nathan? I'm talking to Nathan, not you, Mr. Cleaver. He's the board member.
Ms. Bose, are you able to hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I am looking right now at the spreadsheet that Dave sent. And it shows all the expenditures and the budget expenditures, etc., and what we spent on the various areas, instruction, regular programs, all of it in this spreadsheet in Excel. Now, certainly having all that information, I didn't have a lot of time to look at it either. Certainly having all that information available prior to the meeting would give everyone a chance to look at it and to digest it and see perhaps where other things could be cut or where adjustments could be made so that we don't have to cut things, or at least not as much. So having the information, I believe the information on the student counts and etc. was provided a few months ago. And that may have changed. Certainly with retirements and resignations, the number of employees has changed in the last few months. I would have liked to have seen what's up on the screen prior to the meeting. Now, $350,000 or a 33 or 50 or $60 increase in a person's property taxes may not seem like a lot, but if you've been out of work and not receiving any income at all through unemployment, since many have not been able to get it, that's a significant increase. It's also a significant increase on people who are only getting $12,000 a year in income from Social Security. I would hope that there would be a way to do more with this budget to not require the increase. I believe we raised the budget by $500,000 last year, is that correct? Or the taxes by $500,000? Patty, are you there? Hello? Can you hear me? Mr. Cleaver?
Yes, I'm not sure.
I think taxes were raised by $500,000 last year,
I believe,
but I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking, and I don't want to have.
no, yeah, I'm not, we're having, seems to be.
I lowered my hand because I'm speaking, so just so you know. It would be nice to have that information. I just don't remember, and I know I have it on my computer, but I don't want to go looking for it at the moment because it messes up everything else because it's old. Anyway, having all the information in front of you in a spreadsheet certainly makes a big difference in how you view it. And I, for one, have kind of had it with the not following the law stuff. I'm more than angry, I'm actually livid. I have been told that the preliminary budget was available as of January 9th, I believe, for public inspection, but nobody knew it was there, including the directors. That's wrong. And the entire community, or I shouldn't say entire community, because some of them don't care, is tired of it. Now, it would have been nice to see George's proposal also provided on the website prior to this meeting. The question I do have is on the transportation, the non-mandated transportation. And I realize that some is mandated, but is the actual regular transportation for the kids going to and from school, is that part of the non-mandated transportation?
Transportation is not mandated. The only mandated transportation is students that have it in their IEPs
Okay,
or non-public schools. Like if we have students in our district that go to non-public, like private schools or what have you, within the 10-mile radius, we are still required to transport them, even if as a district, we do not offer transportation.
okay.
So
That's,
for example, if we would do all online education because of the situation we're in, to where we would still be required to transport a number of students.
right, if they went to a private school, or if they had an IEP and had to go to CLIU or something along those lines. All right, that's what I thought. It's a sticky wicket, that's for sure. The 760,000. Is that all sports? Or is it sports and art and band and,
All non-instructional, which would be all extracurricular, sports, everything.
okay.
These are just options. These are not anything.
I know, I get that, I get
We're looking at everything.
Okay, as well, unfortunately, you need to. Now, while I agree that the state does not fund schools as they should, blaming it all on the state isn't going to fly either, because there was a lot of money spent that didn't need to be. A lot.
Barb, I completely agree with you, but we can't change history. And unfortunately, our hands are tied by employment contracts, collective bargaining agreements, and other costs that we're tied to. We can't change what the decisions of the past. The only thing we can do is make more appropriate decisions going forward. So
And
I wholeheartedly agree with your statement. Unfortunately, we can't get out of the things that were formally negotiated. We just need to figure a way how to get through this and negotiate better for our future.
And the other thing too, Barb, I just want to touch, and when we're talking about things at the state level, it's not only just the money, it's also the legislation. If they would, give us some charter school reform, and we're not saying eliminate charter schools, we're not saying that at all. But if we could do it for, $4,000 or $4,500 a student, why are we paying $8,000 or $16,000 a students, to these other programs? So when we say that, it's not just the finance dollar that they're handing us. It could also be changing legislation to where there's less money from the school districts going out. That would cut our charter schools expenses in half.
And I understand that too, but the difference being when you already have, and you have to look at this too, when you already have a brick and mortar school that has a curriculum, etc., when you provide that same stuff through cyber school, there's a lot less cost involved than a school that has to, a cyber school that has to develop all that. So that has to be looked at too. I agree, there's a lot of stuff mandated by the state that makes no sense. If they want to mandate it, they should pay for it.
That would be fantastic.
Sure it would. But that's not the reality either. And my concern is, or my thoughts are, if we look back at where money was wasted in the past, we won't repeat those errors in the future. Because history that is not remembered is often repeated. And that's the main thing. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're looking at cutting, and I understand it's just to show how to save money, all the extracurriculars and all the regular transportation for the students. And it's not just state funding. We have to recognize how we got here and make sure it does not happen in the future. And that's all I have to say.
Can you hear me, Mr. Cleaver?
I have one more individual who has not had a chance to speak yet, Mr. Stern. Mr.
Yes.
Stern?
Yes, Mr. Cleaver. On the George's transportation, number one thing I'd like to thank George's is for the activity on Friday evening. I think it was a special activity given the conditions that our students graduated under, and that they could be able to be recognized throughout the town. I know the town showed up and supported our kids, because we do have great kids, and George doing that, and I believe there was not a bill received for that activity also, was a very that's a great compliment to George's transportation. I was just wondering, our sister district who supports George's transportation, if the number that they requested from Palmerton was similar to the number that they requested from Lehighton. Do we have that information, or
I don't have that
that
information,
not
but I could reach out to Palmerton and see if they'll be willing to provide that information. I believe the newspaper reported that it was somewhere around a $90,000 payment, but I would have to double check that with them.
Okay, if you could have that for next meeting, that'd be great, Patty. Okay.
Mr. Cleaver, I'd like
From
to add in my comment.
non-instructional details, I would appreciate if we could somehow band that out without going too finite, but clubs versus this versus that, and try to get a better number around that non-instructional activity. That would be possible. The other thing I would like to see is, for our next meeting, is our actual tax progression for the last 10 years. I know we had that. I know there's a chart. It might even be in the budget charts from January that we could just rethrow and bundle that up, so people would get an idea of what and how flat the tax has stayed for that period of time. And while I do appreciate Mr. Bradley putting together his information, the fact that it did come out at 5:02 does not give anybody the ability to add the credence, I believe, that it needs to be discussed in a forum. I mean, there's no checking on the numbers. Yeah, he went out and he dug up all the numbers, but I can't say that there's not accuracy issues within those. And having them an hour before and trying to make sure that they are valid is a bit of a task, given that he's gone back for the last 10 years and pulled those numbers from the PDE websites. Although I do appreciate his effort, that's for sure. And that would be all I'd have to say, Mr. Cleaver. Thank you.
I have my hand raised still, Mr. Cleaver.
Okay, at this point, everyone who has
Mr. Cleaver, I still
requested to
have my
speak
hand
has had
raised.
an
Hold on.
opportunity to
Mr.
speak.
Cleaver, I have my hand raised.
Just to close, before we end the meeting, I just want to remind everybody that there will be another Finance Committee meeting next Monday, again at 6 o'clock, and the link to sign up will again be on the website. These documents that were shared tonight will also be published on the website for everyone to view.
Mr. Cleaver, this is not a Sunshine Act if you're not going to let people speak. I have my hand raised. I can make more than one comment at a committee
Again,
meeting.
Patty, I appreciate all your work, and I do, first of all, need to say that I never did receive Mr. Bradley's email, and I even looked in my junk file, which is where I usually file those, and I did not get it. So just FYI. So I certainly couldn't have given him a read receipt. Second of all, even if I had, I'm not 100% sure how we trust an Excel spreadsheet budget when school district accounting, fund accounting is way different than something you're going to put on an Excel spreadsheet and needs to be done on the proper forms. That is according to school law. We get told a lot of things that we don't do for school law, but there's a whole lot of things that other people aren't doing. And for them, that's okay. It's only us that should hear about it. So I thank you for all your work. I want to mention to anyone who's listening that this is going to continue. It's an ever-changing process, and there's going to be tough decisions that have to be made. I, for one, am willing to make them so that, as Barb said, we don't get in this situation again. But right now, the only place we can go is forward. Thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
I have my hand raised, sir.
Okay,
I have my hand
everybody.
raised.
And again, just a reminder, we will have another finance
raised.
meeting on Monday of next week. Thank you all.
Thank you.